is Lieutenant Commander Jessica Krieger, and I'm your friendly host for the Women's Leadership Support Group podcast. And today we are doing our first ever panel discussion. We have a group of women here, and we're recording from the Commissioned Officers Foundation here in Dallas, Texas.
Before we start our introductions, here's a brief bio of each of our panelists. Captain Sydney Kunkel received her bachelor's degree in biology from Drury University. After graduation, she worked for the Tulsa Health Department, inspecting all types of food service and teaching food handlers training classes. While in Tulsa, she received her Master's of Public Health from the University of Oklahoma with a major in environmental health. Shortly after, she was commissioned as an environmental health officer in the U.S. Public Health Service and was assigned to the FDA as a regional food specialist in Kansas City. As a regional food specialist, she has worked with state, tribal, and local food regulatory agencies throughout the country. Since joining the Public Health Service and the FDA, she has deployed in response to several floods and hurricanes and worked at several national special security events representing either the FDA or the PHS. She has served as an instructor for CDC's environmental health training in emergency response, presenting the food safety module, and FDA's investigating foodborne outbreaks course and temporary food events course. In addition to her FDA duties, she serves as commander of the Rapid Deployment Force 5 for the U.S. Public Health Service. Commander Amy Young is an inpatient pain and palliative care pharmacist at the Alaska Native Medical Center in Anchorage, Alaska. Her day job consists of being a clinical inpatient pharmacist that rounds with surgeons daily. She is also the leader of the Pain Service, which is a multidisciplinary team that provides consultation services to improve individual pain control to their patients in the hospital. She has been in the Public Health Service since 2005, beginning her career at the Phoenix Indian Medical Center in Phoenix, Arizona. She has been married for over 10 years and has 2 boys, aged 6 and 9, and a Labrador named Maddie. She and her family love Alaska, and they explore its beauty as much as possible. In the summer, they are found hiking, biking, camping, fishing, hunting, and berry picking. In the winter, she says she can be found on the side of a ski hill where her boys are alpine ski racing or ski jumping. Commander Brittany Keener is currently stationed at the Alaska Native Medical Center in Anchorage, Alaska. She oversees the internal medicine, ambulatory specialty clinic pharmacy, and has been in this position since May of 2016. She has been an officer in the PHS since August 2007 and has been with the Indian Health Services since her commissioning. Commander Keener previously worked as a staff pharmacist at the outpatient pharmacy at the Alaska Native Medical Center and then worked with the Mediset program prior to taking her current position. She is board certified in pharmacotherapy, has a master's in public health with an emphasis in health promotion, and is certified in cardiovascular disease risk management and immunization delivery. Commander Keener has served as FarmPack voting member, alternate to the chair, and under her term as Aurora Borealis COA branch president, was awarded the Large Local Branch of the Year in 2016. Commander Keener is active with Public Health Service athletics, enjoys outdoor activities, and traveling with her husband Kevin and her 2 dogs, Duke and Riley. Lieutenant Commander Spindell is assigned to the Food and Drug Administration as the Engineering Branch Chief and is stationed in Silver Spring, Maryland. Lieutenant Commander Spindell serves as one of 2 supervisory engineers for the Office of Science at the Center for Tobacco Products. Lieutenant Commander Spindell began her career with the FDA in 2009, where she was engaged with compliance and enforcement work regarding medical devices. She also has about 5 years of experience conducting benchtop laboratory research regarding biotechnology at FDA. Lieutenant Commander Spindell is currently responsible for 8 engineers who provide recommendations regarding whether new tobacco products should enter the U.S. market. Lieutenant Commander Spindell served as the chair of the Junior Officers Advisory Group from 2016 to 2017 and is currently the vice chair of the Career Development Subcommittee of the Engineering PAC. Commander Susan Alou attended Creighton University, where she concurrently earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Health Science and a Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 2007. She was commissioned in the U.S. Public Health Service in July 2007 as a staff pharmacist at Gallup Indian Medical Center in Gallup, New Mexico. She served in many positions there, including Performance Improvement Coordinator and as an emergency room pharmacist. She transferred to the Federal Bureau of Prisons at the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina in 2012, and now serves as the Deputy Chief Pharmacist at the Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. She is board-certified pharmacotherapy specialist and is certified in public health and board-certified in advanced diabetes management. At home, she enjoys spending time with her husband and her children, Sam, Stella, Eamon, and Eisen, as well as their dog, Louie.
And I'm going to start and go around and get some introductions from people. And we have...
I'm Commander Susan Alou. I'm a pharmacist stationed at FCC Butner with the Bureau of Prisons.
Hello, I'm Commander Amy Young. I'm a pharmacist with the Indian Health Service stationed in Anchorage, Alaska.
I'm Commander Brittany Keener. I'm also a pharmacist, and I am also at the Alaska Native Medical Center in Anchorage, Alaska.
I'm Captain Cindy Kunkel. I'm an environmental health officer. I'm with the FDA in Kansas City.
This is Lieutenant Commander Samantha Spindell. I'm an engineer at the FDA in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Thank you, ladies, for coming. We're very excited to have you, and we appreciate your patience, given that this is our first real try at this. So I guess I'm going to start out and just ask you guys each a little bit about where you are in your personal lives. So, single, married, have kids, do you have extended family that lives with you, lives close to you? Because the goal of this was to get a group of women who all are at different places in their career and different places in their lives, so we could kind of hear a mix. So, whoever wants to start.
This is Samantha. I am married with no kids, but just one childish husband.
This is Cindy. I'm also married, no kids. I have several four-legged kids.
Okay. What are your four-legged
I
kids?
have 4 horses and a cat.
Really?
This is Brittany. I'm also married, and I also have the children of the four-legged furry variety. I've got 2 dogs, Duke and Riley.
Hi, this is Amy. I have 2 children. I have 2 boys. They are ages 6 and 9, and my husband, of course. The challenges of living in Alaska is that we don't have any family nearby, which is a very common challenge that we have. But we do have our community, which is pretty much our family too. They act like that, so it is nice.
Yeah, and this is Susan. So I have 3 children right now, with one due, in the next couple of weeks here. And we also have a dog that we acquired when I was with the Indian Health Service. And we too have experienced, most of our duty stations have been far from family. So my husband stays home with the kids because it's just been a challenge to otherwise find the support that we need to both be working.
So I feel like one of the hot topics people normally want to hear about, especially when it comes to family and work, is, do you think you have a balance? And if so, how do you keep that balance? Do you have any tips? Do you have any tricks? Or are you just a complete hot mess and you're keeping it together?
I think we all like to think that we actually have a balance, but if that's what our spouses think, that would probably be a really good question for our spouses. Right. To see if they feel the same balance. I'm with Susan. This is Amy. My husband stays at home too with the kids, and so he's very supportive. He is my domestic engineer. He holds my whole household together. And if it wasn't for him, then I would probably be even more of a hot mess than I am. But I feel like I have a balance. I feel like I can turn off on the weekends and when I'm at home, which I feel is really important. But it's definitely a challenge.
Is that something you had to work towards, like at the beginning of your career? Were you like gung-ho, forgetting that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you had to like check yourself back at any point in time?
Absolutely. So I have a story that I always talk about where I was reading a work email before I had gone into work. So it was a morning, and it was probably like an afternoon shift that I had. And I read a work email and got very upset about it, got all worked up. And my husband was like, you know what, all of this response that you have shouldn't be happening at home. And he was very upset about how I was responding and working, essentially, and working to the point of getting really frustrated at home. And so from then on, I turned off. I don't have work email on my phone. I do the best I can. Not to say that work doesn't come home. Of course it does, but I definitely don't have it at my fingertips. Us pharmacists, we get type A about everything coming in. Yeah, so there was definitely a turning point where I had to draw a line.
So I'm just did you have to work that out with your boss? Had you already set the expectation that you were going to be answering emails at home on your off time? Was there any repercussion for you or any difficulty for you with work?
No, there wasn't any repercussion. No, but it was getting to the point where there were expectations. I would get emails with the title, the subject of the email. I know you're on vacation, but can you please answer this one question? And so, no, luckily I didn't have any repercussions. I don't know exactly how that transition went. It was at my last duty station, but I haven't really, I've not set that precedent in my new duty station
That's good that you were able to put a stop to it. It sounds relatively easy. Do any of you get the emails I know you're on vacation or I know you're out, but?
All the time.
Sure.
Yeah. Have you, does it bother you? Is it something that you're able to just turn off and ignore? Is it something you still answer?
This is Brittany. Some things I have to answer because I'm the only person that can answer, and some things can't get resolved if I don't respond.
Okay.
So I usually just make it very short and simple and only answer that and then say, figure it out. If you can't figure it out, call me and quit emailing me, please.
Okay. So what about your work? Are you an SME for something? Why are you the one person that can answer it?
So a couple of years ago, we opened a satellite pharmacy for the internal medicine and specialty clinics, and I oversee that particular pharmacy. So if it's something related to the vaccine refrigerators or something that I only know the codes for, that would be something that they would reach out to me when I'm not physically at work.
Have you reached out to your work at all to ask them about contingency planning? Should there be a second person that knows this kind of stuff?
There is, but that's the director, and sometimes I don't like to
bother them
to get to that point.
Yeah. So should there be a third person, another? I mean, somebody of your level, so that it's not the director, so you're not going all the way to the top in a pinch. Have you ever thought about addressing that with work, another pharmacist?
No. I think her pharmacy is so
it's so new and so small that I think that would be really hard for someone else to remember that in addition to the things that they also have to remember.
Yeah. So. Because it's just hard because everyone's oh, put a stop to it. Don't do it. And then you sometimes run into situations like yours where you can't.
Yeah.
So from a completely different point of view, I work with the Bureau of Prisons, and we cannot access any of our information externally. So we are, if you forget to set your out of office message, it's forgotten. You can't access that email if you are offsite or out of BOP. And so for me, one of the challenges was the last time that I was on maternity leave was when it was only 6 weeks long, and I still ended up coming into work 3 times to address issues, to be able to get into my email and kind of handle some things that were going on. So I'm a little bit apprehensive. I'm grateful and excited to have 12 weeks to spend with my family and with this new baby. But I'm also thinking back on those 6 weeks and wondering how many times am I going to end up going into work to try to address things so that, I can have balance when I return to work in those 12 weeks. Because if I leave all of my responsibilities unattended. And again, sometimes it's hard to delegate those things and to pass the torch or, accept that someone's going to complete them in a way that's different from how you might have done it. But so in terms of shutting it off, I don't have a choice, but, in its own way that can present challenges as well.
So with your experience in past maternity leave, have you done anything to address that going into this next maternity leave, or were you able to, or?
I have pretty much tempered my expectation that I'm actually okay with it. I think that it won't be unreasonable to kind of plan that at a reasonable interval, I will go in, for a couple of hours and do a little bit here and a little bit there. And then again, just check in sometime later. And that's fine. I love my job, so it doesn't feel like a chore really, but I think that's basically my plan. We do have plans in place as far as delegating tasks and who will be the front line when a certain type of issue arises. But I think that, as Brittany said, sometimes there are just things that they need you for, they need your input for, and so I'm okay with that.
Okay. Captain Kunkel, you probably have the most years experience with the court in the room. So what struggles have you run into? What changes have you implemented? Like how do you deal with this kind of situation?
Mine's a little bit different. There aren't very many people across the country that do what I do, but a lot of what happens is not quite like what you're saying. I can send it to somebody else, but I think like all Corps officers, I think 95% of the Corps officers are type A. Just let me do it myself. And so it is a little hard to delegate things, but I kind of had to a little bit, especially last fall when we were gone to the hurricanes, and I did watch my email, but I had told my boss and I had told the people who work with me that don't count on me. Don't count on me at all. I may not have communications. I may not know you've asked a question, and I will not have time to deal with it. But there were a couple of times where I had to engage with them. But the majority of the time I might look at it and I didn't get that. I'll deal with it later. And because once you start engaging, then they think they can ask you anything. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of left it. And except for one or two little things where I just absolutely had to, which was kind of hard in the middle of the hurricane to step outside in the rain and say, would you please take care of this for me?
I think I found that too, is that a lot of times, as long as you can give it just enough time, like if you can sit back and give it just enough time, it'll resolve itself.
Yeah, and sometimes people are waiting for us to step in. And then if, oh gosh, she really isn't checking her email, then they'll step up.
And I liked what Brittany had said about being very clear about, I will answer this question.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. Setting that boundary.
So speaking of deployments, let's start talking a little bit about how you balance your Corps life and your agency life. I know that's something a lot of us struggle with because you have a full second job being in the Corps. So on deployments, on vacations, like what do you do to keep your agency happy, and how do you work to find that balance?
For me, anytime that I am on annual leave, if I'm spending time with family or friends, I just refuse to check email. That is my time, and not going to do it. But if I'm away for any reason related to my job, related to PHS, that's when I'll check email and be available by phone. And I think that's been a nice compromise with my civilian supervisor and the majority of my staff that are civilians who don't fully understand PHS and what it means to be an officer. Being away for 3 weeks for Puerto Rico is a long time to ask to be away, plus being at this conference and any trainings related to PHS, let alone trainings related to your day job. It's a lot of time to ask to be away. And so that's been the compromise for me. Anytime I'm not in the office for a work-related or PHS function, I am available sporadically.
My job involves a lot of travel, or my day job involves a lot of travel. So I do check my email when I'm on the road, and I do sometimes stay up late at night doing email just because if I don't, when I do get back to the office, there'll be 200 new messages instead of 50 new messages. And it helps me. But sometimes when I'm out on personal things, it's just no, except for example, this month we're on call. So I can never totally disengage. I have to pay attention to what's going on and check just in case something happens because I've got to know.
Deployments are scarce for Anchorage area, so we're lucky to have more opportunities recently. But I was not able to continue my RDF term when I moved up there. So that brings its own challenges, right? I mean, if you don't have the opportunity, then the support for PHS work is less than it was at my previous station.
I've not had the opportunity to go on deployment, having been pregnant or nursing for a great portion of my PHS career. But I have actually had several opportunities to TDY within my agency, which is, of course, I've really enjoyed, and the agency loves that, because then they get the support they need, being able to kind of move us around where they need us, when they need us. And so, that brings challenges on the home front, of course, but in terms of my agency, we have a lot of opportunity to lend other officers support so that they can attend a training or take leave, if they're in a duty station that hasn't had an opportunity for, if there's a pharmacist there that just hasn't had a break in a long time. So there's good support for that type of short-term staff movement.
So speaking of challenges on the home front, so you all told us a little bit about your own family situations. So are there any challenges that you feel like your current family situation causes for work or deployments or PHS or benefits to where you're at? I don't know if that's something you all think about on a daily basis.
I think we do a really good job involving our families with a lot of the PHS things that we do, like athletic events and COA functions and things. They all come with us because they're the only ones that we have there. So our spouses, and I know Amy's kids have attended a bunch of different events that we go to because that's part of our life too. And I almost find sometimes more enjoyment doing the PHS side of things than my day job. And it's nice to involve our family and our extended community family with those PHS events.
So have you only been stationed in Alaska?
I've only been in Alaska.
So you've been in Alaska and out of Alaska. So this is more of an Alaska question. So you guys seem to be a family up there.
Yeah.
Do you find it different in different duty stations? And you guys are at other duty stations. Do you find your geographic area, your agency area to have a similar community about the officers and outside activities?
I feel like Alaska's really changed our family in the sense of what our activities are on the weekends and what we do, and we are adventurous. And in Alaska, you don't wait for the weather or you don't wait for like the right day. You just go anyways, and so that kind of is fun because then you end up with stories of the worst bike ride you've ever had. And it's 40 degrees and rain pelting you and you think you're going to die. But we did it together. And we all did it. And everybody finished. We even drug a pharmacy student with us on that bike ride. And so you come back with good stories. But I just feel like, our kids are, and that's how my kids are, is they just do these things. Like they think it's just a natural, like that it's normal for our kids to see what we see on a regular basis. But it's also normal to have the PHS pride. Like my kids are like really like sickeningly cute about their PHS pride. So
yeah. And I think because we're so remote that a lot of us didn't know anyone when we moved there. Mm-hmm. So your work family becomes your family and we just spend a lot of time together.
And to kind of answer your question, it wasn't like that at my other duty station, but we moved 2 weeks before Christmas. And we had 3 houses that we went to on Christmas when we first moved there. So I think that everybody just is natural to just take everybody in.
Yeah, my first duty station was in Gallup Indian Medical Center. And in a similar way, I was single and fresh out of pharmacy school when I got there. And it was kind of the same thing. Like almost everyone that was there was a transplant. And it was immediately like we did everything together. And the thing that I really miss is that we brought our dogs with us to everything. Like everyone got paired with sort of like a mutt that had been found out there, And so I had mine, and so we had a family of people and of 4-legged children and, just everybody together doing it. Again, having all these adventures, which was really amazing. And I've been lucky I've always been stationed in places that had a large number of PHS officers. And so we had that core camaraderie at the duty stations that I've been in as well.
That makes me happy. What about you guys?
It's so interesting to hear that folks in the field have such a sense of a community with the PHS officers you work with. I think being stationed in D.C., it's so different because the entire city is open to you. If you want to take a run in Rock Creek Park, if you want to be a foodie and enjoy a ton of restaurants. And there's so many young professionals in the area. So there's just so much to do. And I think part of that leads to not as much camaraderie with your coworkers. But I always felt a very strong connection to PHS. I love the COA picnic that Jess helps to host. And I'm trying to actually build within my team a little bit more of that camaraderie and foundation of trust by bringing our families together as well for some events.
Yeah, the DC area gives its own difficulty for that as well, just based off the geography. So DC is sometimes difficult because we might all work at the FDA White Oak campus, but we might live 2.5, 3 hours apart because everybody commutes in about an hour. And so that, again, is just a difficulty for those nice things. Like, it's hard to get people to come to the DC State Oak picnic sometimes. It's hard to get people to come to the Bowling Valley because it's an hour, 45 minutes from their house. So it just doesn't happen. So, Captain, where are you stationed then?
Kansas City.
Do you have a lot of officers there?
Quite a few. And there's a lot of different agencies represented there. There's a Federal Bureau of Prisons at Leavenworth. There's Indian Health Service at Haskell. The federal building has officers from HRSA and CMS and ASPR and probably 2 or 3 others I'm leaving out. FDA has quite a few officers around. So there's a number of different agencies, but we have a little bit of the same problem, what you're saying, even though we may not be 3 hours apart from the office. People are often going 45 minutes one way or 45 minutes the other way, and it's hard to get them back together. And, Haskell and Leavenworth and FDA are pretty far apart, and officers may live far to the extremes of either side. So it's hard to get an event where you'll get a large participation, but we can get 15 or 20 together sometimes.
That's not too bad. So I want to get back to the family life type of questions here for a minute. And it might not apply, so this might be a dead question. But do you guys ever feel judged based off your situation? Do you, with kids, ever feel like people are oh, they're always leaving for their kids? That kind of judgment. And then those of you without kids, do you ever feel judged that oh, well, you should be doing more because your life is so easy and free? And just saying things I've heard. But you know what I mean? You're all on different sides of the same coin. So do you ever get the pressure from the other side of people that make you feel oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have left for this event or that event, or I have been out a lot for sick kids? Or do you get any of that? You might not. I hope you don't. I'm just curious.
I think in the span of the career, I may have gotten that judgment in the sense that my husband's home. So I can get scheduled any shift because I don't have to worry about daycare. Whereas there's other family members or there's other coworkers that have daycare that they have to schedule around. So, that then the shift is adjusted for particular people. So I don't necessarily think that I have that backup. So if I have sick kids, I have somebody to take care of the sick kids. I don't have to leave for the sick kids or, the different events for the kids as well. I had a lot more challenges with that in my last duty station compared to now. So I have a lot more accommodating schedule now. So it's not as much of a challenge, but it was previously for sure.
Yeah. Again, since my husband also stays home with the kids, I like the domestic engineer part, by the way, because my husband's an engineer by training as well. He has more degrees than I do, but actually, if I'm thinking about situations at work where there's some kind of imbalance or something that I feel like I'm getting pressure from my coworkers on, it's actually the amount of core activities that I have, not my home life activities, which again, I have this home spouse, but it's more that, there's this impression that, and it might be because it's true, well, she's got a TCON every day of the week, and so then am I not pulling my weight with some of the other responsibilities that there are? And it might be one of those things that if you pulled up the quantitative data, maybe I am, but the perception is that I'm taking time out to do these core activities. So, that is something that I'm actually struggling with right now, is trying to find that balance between, okay, how much have I taken on? Am I meeting my other responsibilities? And even if I am, how is that being perceived?
So you have to do your core activities in secret.
Right, which is a challenge because we have a kind of group workspace and shared phone system.
Or at night.
If only the TCONs were scheduled.
Yeah. And being in Alaska, that's even more of a challenge because a lot of mine, I can't make the calls because I may be the only person in the pharmacy at that time of day. And it's a 4-hour time difference from the East Coast, which has its challenges in itself. So sometimes I just have to wait for the recordings to come out and try to play catch up because, you can't do it all.
You don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to make a 5 a.m. call?
If they had them, I would. But
Actually,
it's always
we don't
at like
have-
11 a.m.
Yeah, sure. They're usually like 8,
Yeah.
9,
Okay.
noon your guys' time.
Yeah.
So
I'll
which
start
does not
scheduling
work.
0700 Eastern Standard Time just for you guys. So you can get up at like 3.
Yeah. Listen on my
We
drive
have
in.
that trouble on the deployment team because when we have calls, especially for the leadership for the or for the entire team, it's what time of day do we do it? Well, if we do it in the middle of the day, it's clinical time,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
many people can't break free. And if we do it, then we've got to adjust for East Coast and West Coast, and we do have a few in Alaska and a couple in Hawaii. There's no one time.
Mhm.
So we end up having them at like 9 o'clock Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern, because that's, 8 p.m. Central and 7 Mountain, and it's only 6 in the West. And then we record them, and the other people just have to.
Yeah, I know that
It's
being
hard.
on the farm pack, that we've had discussions like this. I'm sure like every group has gone through the like what time is best, and you try to think of, try to get through those barriers. And I think what we've come to the conclusions that I know of is that we just nobody has 2.5 hours blocked out of their day. But if we can cut it back to 2 separate weeks and split the calls, then it's worked out a little bit better. But yeah, we had the exact same challenge. Like, okay, well, what time does work? And everybody's got random times that work for them.
So I'm going to now kick that original question back to you three ladies. And
Okay.
I'm hoping you've got no negative stigma or pushback. But have you had coworkers or bosses or anybody seem to give you grief for not having kids but still wanting to take off or anything like that? I'm hoping the answer is no.
I haven't
Crossing my
experienced
fingers.
that, no.
I haven't gotten any grief. I think there's a little bit sometimes of a projection of somebody, let's say if they want to take leave because their kid is sick. Because I don't have kids, they feel a need to like overly explain that. And I have no problem with it. I get it. Like, your kid's sick. You don't have to even tell me your kid's sick. That's fine.
Yeah.
You got leave? Take it. But I think in talking with other supervisors that do have kids, it doesn't seem like they get as many explanations as I do. So I find that interesting.
No, not really for me.
Excellent. That makes me happy to hear. So another topic, just to pivot, that I really wanted to talk about is right now the Corps is working on reimagining itself. And so I want to talk to each of you about what being a Corps officer means to you. Just talk about what benefits you think it has and deployments and anything else you want to talk about. And then I know we need to get moving along because a couple of you ladies need to make it to the Anchor and Caduceus dinner.
So I'll build off of what Susan was mentioning about making time for PHS activities during the workday and how that might be perceived by others. I really believe in if you want something to get done, you give it to a busy person. Because they need to time manage appropriately. You give it to somebody that has one task to do, well, they can procrastinate. All right, I'll get to that eventually. But there's no push. There's no real drive to get that done as soon as possible because they don't have other things to do. And so I would say far and away, PHS officers, because they have this whole other set of duties they need to attend to, we are able to manage our time appropriately, and we, in my opinion, many times overshadow our civilian counterparts that do the same job. And I think it's because we have this added layer of commitment and dedication and public service. I mean, our civilians, they do terrific work, and many of them do have that element of, I want to serve vulnerable populations. But I think there's something more with the folks that want to put that uniform on that gives that internal motivation and impetus, and it keeps us going to do all these additional activities in that same 8-hour block.
I don't know. I started out at a local health department, and I worked there for a while, and didn't know about the Corps. But I was in Oklahoma, so I eventually heard about it. And then when I heard about the position at FDA, the person that was telling me about it was a Corps officer, and they began to explain what it was all about and everything. And I thought that sounded kind of interesting. I wasn't quite sure. But it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. I would never have gotten to do the things that I've done if I'd stayed at the health department, which would still have been a good career and would still have contributed a lot, but I've gotten to do so much more. Or if I had been civil service at FDA, which would still be a good decision. Mm-hmm. But I've just had a lot more opportunity to do a lot more things and, personal growth and meet a lot more people and do a lot of things that were fun and some that were very hard and some that were kind of scary and just a lot more opportunities.
I completely second that. By far, the best decision I made was joining PHS. Before I joined PHS, I was considering Peace Corps, AmeriCorps. I wanted to do some element of service. But as you know, there's a time stamp on that. It's 2 years. There's nothing more. And PHS, thinking about doing service throughout your entire career, that was a no-brainer for me.
I want to go on top of that as well. It doesn't necessarily answer your question, Jessica, but definitely, I definitely don't regret my decision. But when I come from a father that's a pharmacist, and when I had 3 job offers, and he was in management at Costco, and so he wanted his daughter to follow along, and so I had a job offer from Costco when I graduated pharmacy school. And I didn't take it, so I disappointed my father because I didn't follow completely in his footsteps. However, very shortly after I got commissioned, I was able to take him on a tour of where I worked. And I took him to all the pharmacies and showed him what I did every day and met all the people. And it was really cool because when we left there, he was like, okay, fine. You made the right decision, and that's fine. I can finally accept it. Your grandfather asked me to come in to become a Marine or something when he got out of school, and he goes, and I didn't listen to him, and I should have listened to him. So it was good. It was good to get that other perspective. But to answer the question of the Corps in general, I am fueled by challenge, and I'm fueled by having this satisfaction and this variety in our job. And there's so many of these things that we have, and so many elements that we have of that I've quit jobs because I was bored. Because they would be happy to pay me to sit there, but I can't do that. I have to be busy. I have to be doing something. So the opportunity to serve our population of Indian Health Service, it's so rewarding. So it's been great.
So I have to jump in here because speaking of Amy showing everybody all the pharmacies and showing them what she does, my first experience actually witnessing PHS pharmacists at work was as a student under her. And her first, and that experience to me was so affirming because I already had this idea that I wanted to go where I was needed, and holy cow, I was so inspired seeing these pharmacists practice pharmacy I didn't think was possible anywhere else. And it was really true because then I was very single-minded and when I get out of here, I am going Indian Health Service, I'm going Commissioned Corps, and I totally did that. And as many of us here have already said, I got to do things that I never had imagined when I first thought about going into that particular profession. I got to be at the ready for, the preterm delivery of an infant that had no prenatal care, right? Be where you're needed. I got to be in the emergency department, when we were initiating pharmacy services there. And then, now I work for the Bureau of Prisons, and I absolutely feel this alignment where I feel like the work that I do as a pharmacist ties in really well with our mission for reentry as well, because as I'm doing diabetes management, a lot of the self-care behaviors that I'm teaching there are the same types of behaviors that are going to make those patients successful when they go back into the community. And so there's never been any question that yes, this is where I'm called to be. Mm-hmm. And it's also exciting to get to hear everybody else talk about it because it's just really affirming of what the Corps allows for you to find that alignment of what drives you and what the community needs.
But I want to add on to that too, because a lot of those things find you. Because all of the specialties that I've ever worked in, I never could care less before I started them, anything about them. But all of a sudden, I'm a SME in it. And so I think that that's the cool thing, too, is that these things, they find you. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's the same, Brittany, too.
Yeah, it's not what you ever would have imagined 10 years ago. And
Yeah. I think it's funny that Amy was one of your preceptors when you were a student, because when I was a student, Brittany was one of my preceptors, and she was one of my first experiences in learning what the core was and what all we could do. And it's just a small core, and that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think the people that succeed in the core just have that inner drive to really serve, and we're busy. I'm never more productive than when I have 5,000 things on my list. If I only have 2 things to do, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
That's what it's time. That's what my mom says.
Listen to this podcast.
My mom says, always burning the candle from both ends.
That's when I'm most productive.
Yeah. Me too.
I just want to thank you all for coming and doing this podcast with us today in this panel discussion. I love COF. I love coming. It's such a reaffirming experience for the core, for pharmacy, for me specifically, because I get to talk with you ladies who I wouldn't normally talk to, and I get to hear your stories. And thank you guys so much for coming. It has really been a pleasure. And
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey listeners, one more thing before we go. If you have any ideas or suggestions for interview questions, topic of discussions, or folks you'd like to hear interviewed, please send us your suggestions at forumforfemaleofficers@gmail.com. That's FORUM, the number 4, FEMALEOFFICERS@gmail.com. Thanks so much. Hey listeners, one more thing before we go. If you have any ideas or suggestions for interview questions, topic of discussions, or folks you'd like to hear interviewed, please send us your suggestions at forumforfemaleofficers@gmail.com. That's FORUM, the number 4, FEMALEOFFICERS@gmail.com. Thanks so much.